Little history about this 1800. This is an Oliver 1800 C series, front wheel assist, 1964. Dad bought this when the dealership was still open, somewhere probably right around 1990. We've owned it for, amazingly enough, close to 30 years. A customer came in and he was coming in for some other parts, and he got talking about this tractor. He had gotten an offer for salvage on it. He couldn't get it to run or crank over. They rebuilt the starter, tried pull starting it, no luck, was ready to give up on it, something wrong with the motor. It had an 1810 loader on it, which was Oliver's big loader. That thing was just massive. I probably should have kept it, but we sold the loader off and kept the tractor, and it was parked out here for a couple of years before we got to it. You can see right here some damage from the loader. At some point they must have lifted something too heavy. That's not a factory weld right here, and this is not a factory gusset right here. So I'm pretty sure they snapped that side off, and then before we painted it, the cover on this side was yellow, whereas everything else was green. So I think they had to replace some of that with something from an industrial salvage tractor to get it back to running. But they, when we went through the axle, everything seemed to be lined up good, and whoever did the welding and putting it back together seemed to have done a good job. We just had to go through and reseal it, make sure everything was where it should be. So anyways, this guy mentions it, and Dad goes and looks at it and says, I'll give you what the salvage yard had told me to give him, and hauled it back home. And it sat here for a couple of years, and we finally got tearing into it. And all it ended up turning is they didn't have anything over the exhaust. They just had water on top of a piston. The engine was actually still free, but it was tired. There was like it must have spun a bearing at some time. The mains were a couple different sizes, and the rods were a different size yet. We ended up getting a different crankshaft for it. Had to have the block line board. Did new pistons and sleeves, just totally went through the engine, except for the injection pump, but we did do the injectors. And I just recently, about 3-4 years ago, did the pump. And I guess while I'm on the subject of the pump, some of these late 1800 diesels actually had electric shutoff. You see the wire going right there, and it was factory. It shows up in the service manual, the wiring diagrams. They just ran a single wire up to energize it, and the injection pump shop even mentioned when I was having that rebuilt that the shutoff valve was the really old style, as some kind of flapper instead of a more modern solenoid type shutoff. And if I wanted that upgrade, because they were known to failing, and even though this one had lasted all this time, but I figured, well, it wasn't going to get any easier and wasn't going to get any cheaper, so I had them upgrade the shutoff in there. But it's so it's factory. It even had a little plug in the hole where the let's see if I can get back, where the shutoff cable would normally be. It was just capped off, and so we didn't mess with that. And went through the hydropower while we had it out. Glad we did that. Seals were just hard and old. We should have pulled since it was non-running, we didn't know the state of much anything about it. We should have pulled the hydraulic pump off. It's weak, but it gets the job done. So maybe someday. But we finished up restoration of it in '94. And I've used it off and on the farm, so it's showing some age on the restoration. Still overall not too bad, but we get it. And our parts man, Bill, he had used to been the half owner of the dealership in Mason, Michigan, known as Francis Platt, and he recognized the tractor. They had sold it new. Originally went to a lumber yard, and that's what it spent the majority of its life doing, was with that loader on it, just pushing sawdust around, moving logs. Did very little actual farm work. And then they eventually sold it, and this guy, I think he was over by Ypsilanti where we picked it up, had it, and he'd done some small farming with it until it gave him troubles, and that's how we came across it. So it's kind of neat. I like the fact that It came from our parts man's dealership. Makes it mean a little more to me. Then on the back, we got my white 6342 rollover plow. I found that here in Michigan. And it's the same as the Oliver 6342. Right now it's set over to left-hand plowing, and you just flip it over and go to right-hand, turn around, and you'll see some video of that. It just uses a single cylinder. You contract the cylinder, that gets it halfway, and then while it still has momentum going over center, you reverse your lever so it starts expanding the cylinder and it comes down to this other side and it's flipped over and ready to turn around and go the other way. It's pretty straightforward. 318s. I will make a note that well, it's nice and easy to change shares. This one was broke. I just changed that. You just roll it over and it's ready to work on. No sticking your head under anything or anything like that. But when I bought it from a gentleman's estate, wasn't an estate sale, his son was just selling everything, and he had just put new iron on all 6 bottoms, left and right. And so, I mean, look how nice and thick that moldboard is. So I know I can play with this one for a long time and not have to worry about it wearing out and finding left-hand parts, which so far hasn't been hard. Only thing I've replaced is shares. They're available, but they cost pretty much exactly twice what the right-hand shares cost. But this plow is handy for doing little spots, straightening out fields after plow days. That's what I'm going to do with it. Finish up a couple lands that weren't even, and I don't want a dead furrow in a low area, and so that's why I've got it hooked up now. This one's, I gotta say, this is kind of probably right around 81 or something, because it's got the white motor logo on it, and then it's also got the white farm equipment logo on it, and those did not overlap, other than the fact that this was probably on hand inventory when white motor became white farm equipment in 1982, and they probably just slapped another sticker on it and said, well, there, now it's white farm equipment. And you got to be plowing right for it to say white, otherwise it's there. I fixed it. Oh, the 1800. I'm trying to remember how many horsepower these were supposed to be. We had it on the dyno, and it seems like it's doing about 85. I've pulled 5 bottoms with it, and in our ground it can do it, especially with a front wheel assist. 3 bottoms ain't too much of a challenge for it, but that plow is heavy. I've had it on my 1655, and it's all it wants to do to lift it. If there's some dirt hanging on the bottoms, it has a real hard time. So you almost need a size bigger tractor for lifting capacity than you do for pulling capacity. But just a fun plow to run. We'll get you some more footage of it out in the field. Oh, one more tip I was going to give. You might have noticed the mold boards were oiled down. That was something Dad taught me. If they're rusty, you didn't paint them or something, keep up with stuff like I did. Not. He used diesel fuel, I use motor oil, but just wipe them down ahead of time, and that really helps with them scouring. Gets down in little pits and stuff and keeps that dirt from sticking down in there. Definitely speeds up the process. But that's the 1800C.